Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Tuesday, August 25th, 2020. Yes, it is time for yet another show. It is also time for my birthday. I guess that's a normal way of saying things. I don't know. Trying to figure out how you humans here on Earth handle these things. Yep, it's my birthday, and guess what? I am reminded also by Bill in Portland, Maine, that this is a birthday that I share with others. This part I knew. I mean, there are other people in the world, and many of them were born on August 25th. Sean Connery, I did not know at all, I guess, is born on the same day. As it happens, we've run into this problem before. I forget. I have early onset. I don't know anything about what I'm doing. It's not an actual disease, but it was an onset that occurred early. Armando. Is it Armando's birthday as well? I'm pretty sure that I keep doing this, and every year I say, it's amazing. How could that possibly be? And I don't remember it, except this time I guess I remembered it. And I also rememred that, and this is a really weird thing, and if they ever do the astrology chart for the show, I guess we tip over and fall off the end of the earth. Scott's birthday is tomorrow. So, I don't know. I guess that means I should give him the day off from doing the summary of the show, except I'm actually going to really need him for that. And then we have another housekeeping item I guess I can add to all of this, which is that we have Thursday business to take care of, and we won't be able to be on the air for a live show on Thursday. So I will alert Greg to that during his next stop here tomorrow, if I can remember to do that. And if I don't, somebody should tweet to us that I need to remind Greg of that so that I don't forget that. This is how old I am now. I need to be reminded of these things. So I've taken all my medications and my pills, and I guess I'm ready to go. Yeah, I don't know. It will be a weird thing. It's odd that out of all the people in the world who would share this birthday, including Sean Connery, there should be so many involved with this show. It's a Virgo kind of a show, I guess, and it works if you're into that sort of astrology thing. So yeah, collecting my birthday messages at some point, I think, during the day today. I get some, 650,000 notifications from Facebook that everybody has woken up and been reminded that my birthday is today, and they post happy birthday greetings, and I am reduced to having to thank them en masse, doing my once a year post on Facebook, coming back and saying, here's my once a year post on Facebook. I don't really use Facebook, but I appreciate the fact that everybody else does. Although I wonder whether a lot of people have withdrawn from Facebook over the controversies this year. That's entirely possible. Anyway, in the rest of the world, as it turns out, hardly anybody is paying attention to my birthday. I like to think, again, that it is that they're ignoring it because it's Armando's birthday more so than mine. But he enjoys that kind of confrontation, so it's good. It is the middle of, I guess the beginning of the Republican National Convention. I suppose it feels like the middle of the Republican National Convention now, because having seen the opening night of it, or, gotten a taste of the opening night of it, it feels like we have been in this convention for several years now, maybe even decades. If you turned on the TV, you wouldn't have seen very much, because I think they reduced it to about an hour of evening coverage. Do I have this right? Maybe I can check in on this. When Joan may have kept closer track of it, or perhaps saw somebody else who did mentioning it. I did notice that last week the networks claimed that they were going to reduce the amount of time that they were dedicating to the Democratic National Convention for a number of reasons, I'm sure, not the least of which was that they knew that there would probably be some technical limitations putting on the virtual convention, and they might not have, it might have been a favor almost, really. I don't know whether they worked it out with the people producing the Democratic show, but it might have done them a favor, saying there's only a 2-hour block of time, prime time hours, that you really have to worry about any of your technical screw-ups coming across on the national networks, and that might have been a small favor in that respect. Anyway, point is they reduced it to about 2 hours on mainstream broadcast networks, and so they announced that they were going to do the same for the Republicans, and they did announce ahead of time that they were doing it. They were reducing the number of hours of primetime coverage for Democrats in an effort to enable them without favor to reduce the amount of time that they would have to commit to covering the Republican convention with live coverage. They wanted to do things equally, although, they're not required to do that. And honestly, if they're really evaluating things seriously in terms of news value, they shouldn't. But they are instead evaluating things in terms of advertising revenue and how much headache am I going to get hearing complaints from conservatives around the country if I shortchange the Republicans out of their opportunity to lie and dangerously mislead the public about a pandemic, among other things, for just one example. So they decided to parcel things out evenly. And then, of course, we heard that Donald Trump was going to insist on reserving time, possibly an hour or more, for himself every single day at the convention, which is also an interesting, we talked about it yesterday, it's an interesting decision on a number of levels, not the least of which would be that if you're being limited to 2 hours of primetime coverage for the Republican convention, then, and one of them is Donald Trump giving an unprepared, rambling speech, that puts puts all the rest of the Republicans who were hoping to speak in something of a bind. However, only Trump's family members are planning to speak, I guess. So maybe they'll get over it, or maybe it just added to the grievance pile that they'll all laugh about when he's finally dead. I don't know. I don't know what it's like in that family. Although we're finding out in tell-all books, piece by piece. Perhaps we'll get to that story. But at any rate, what I found interesting was Trump made a rally-style visit to North Carolina, and I think he was elsewhere in North Carolina before heading over to Charlotte to make an appearance at the convention. And so the networks, I guess, decided, once again, we're pretending that this guy is the president. We'll switch over live to carry some of his remarks. And people were pointing out, I thought you were going to balance things out. And so you're planning 2 hours of coverage tonight on the networks, and now you're giving him, he turned out to ramble on for almost an hour himself. So an extra free hour for Donald Trump to ramble in the morning, and that, is that going to count against your 2 hours of coverage tonight? And from what I saw, it actually did. Not a lot of the networks actually gave, not all of the networks actually gave time over to the convention. And I'm not exactly sure what Fox did. I didn't look at Fox News channel, but the local Fox channels that air the news, the local news, they didn't show any of the convention at all. And it looked to me like they discounted the morning hour that Donald Trump stole, and they covered the Republican convention from 10 to 11 last night on, NBC, maybe I might have switched on and had a look at that. If you did the same, then you would have seen, some of the big names for the night. I kept switching back and forth between that and actually the King's Speech, which was on the local Fox channel 5 here in the DC area. And I said, this is a lot better. I'll watch this one. And anyway, I saw Kim Guilfoyle get on and scream her head off, which was amazing. I think everybody saw that. And from what I was able to gather on Twitter, mixed reactions in terms of who thought who actually, might have been the best speaker. I actually saw a couple of people give it to Donald Trump Jr., which was also very interesting. I mean, there wasn't a great deal to choose from, and the bar was very low. But apparently he delivered his speech relatively well, although it was, I should also note that a wide swath of my Twitter stream was convinced that he was high on cocaine at the time. And here I thought that they would have thought that about Kimberly Guilfoyle because she was screaming her head off. But he too was a little overanimated, but apparently his eyes were sort of red, squinty, and watery. And I don't know what exactly that's supposed to indicate, but it was clearly different and wrong. And why don't we'll adopt the Republican stance on everything. That's different, and so therefore wrong, and we'll do that. I guess. Anyway, I don't know what he said, but I definitely saw about 15 references to the idea that he was on drugs at the time and that they ought not to let him out on the stage in that condition. And Kim Guilfoyle just overexcited and screaming. She seemed to have been delivering a convention hall volume and energy level speech, except without a convention crowd in the room. So it just really came across as overexcited and crazy. And then, of course, you're supposed to give a speech. Those crescendos are supposed to, I think, typically be for positive messages and about going out and fighting on behalf of blah, 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 and making your nominee the next president of the United States or the same old president of the United States, as the case may be here. But, instead her crescendos were about, doom and gloom and how communists were coming for everything and the regular Republican fare. I don't think they broke any new ground in their accusations last night, but I didn't see too much. Tim Scott gave a totally regular, normal speech, and I thought it went pretty well, although it was called out for me that he apparently accused Democrats of wanting to, or that their plan was, if they get the chance to take over the country, they would turn America into a socialist utopia, which, I assume, I don't know whether that was a verbal slip or whether whoever wrote the speech, whether it was him or somebody else, doesn't know what utopia means and just, thinks about the term socialism as being a pie in the sky, socialist utopia idea. But I don't know. They let that one slip. So, I guess I'll take it. If we're going to turn the place into a utopia, let's get started. I was going to vote for Joe Biden anyway, but if there's a socialist utopia in the offing, I'll take it. Really, any utopia. Just so long as it's a utopia, it doesn't bother me what the system is, because utopias are pretty great, as I understand it. Anyway, it was an interesting show. I hope you also fake found it interesting, like me, and stayed away from most of it. I didn't see, there was a part apparently, and I missed it entirely because I, again, flipped over to the King's speech, in which Donald Trump did make an appearance and I guess tried to emulate the chats that Joe Biden had with regular people via video connection, of course. And that came across fairly well, I thought, in the Democratic convention, what clips I saw of it. And that's, of course, because Joe Biden is a pretty personable guy and has no trouble relating in close retail situations. Donald Trump is not that person, but they wanted to show that he could be. And I don't know how he did because I missed the whole thing. But apparently it was a little bit more awkward, let's say, than what Joe Biden was able to pull off. Also, the roll call of the states got a lot of attention. Mostly because the Democrats had done it so well. And also, you should point out, I'm talking to myself, point out, they, for whatever reason, scheduled it during the early hours of day one of the convention and didn't save it for later or for prime time. Democrats made a choice of doing it during the prime time window and, of course, produced this really nice montage of America and America's peoples. And it came off really well and got lots of great reviews. And Republicans, it was a short notice. They probably saw it, and Trump said, I want to copy that. And we said, we can't do it. It's not enough time. We can't arrange the whole thing. So I guess delegates in the hall did, in fact, deliver their votes from right there. And I guess they chose, I don't know whether they all stepped up to a single microphone or whether they announced it from their seat. and they used virtual backgrounds or whatever, but they were all presented in headshot, mid-torso and up, very close up, with a backdrop, those that the PR companies give you now. They just had printed RNC, Republican National Convention, in red, white, and blue over and over on a, piece of paper and stuck it behind their heads. So you didn't forget what program you were watching, something you might see oddly enough in Hollywood, which they hate. And anyway, it made for a very bland presentation. No variance in the background and no variance in skin tone either. A bunch of white people getting up and even from states and territories where there are very notable native populations that could and should have represented the territory or the state. And they just didn't make use of that. And somebody put together a nice comparison of the look of the Democratic roll call from Alaska and Hawaii and other, Colorado, Arizona, where there were some native folks who made the appearance, and just basically showing same background, bunch of white people. I think the last one, Hawaii, was a big old white guy with a lei on. So there you go. That was the visual variance. And Trump spent the morning complaining on Twitter about why aren't the networks showing our roll call of states, because he heard that it was such a big success for the Democrats. And the answer was they were carefully parceling out their time. I commend the networks. If I actually have it right here, I would commend them for the idea that if they give away free time to Trump in the morning, they should subtract it from what they give him in the evening. So well done there. We'll see whether it continues. Let's see. Many other items put away for you in Pocket, tweeted about last night. We'll cull from all of them and try and bring you some semblance of a connected show. Oh, my text messages are now lighting up with all the people, all the family members who remembered my birthday but forgot my radio show. I can't answer, but I'll get to you soon. Okay, I appreciate it. Let's see. Man, there's a lot of weird things out there that we can include in today's show. Let's say I will recommend to you the story in Vox. We don't need their full explainer on this, but I liked the headline. It's promising. If you haven't seen it, I would suggest maybe you take a look at it. And it was prepared by Aaron Rupar, who puts out all their brilliant little video clips via Twitter. I think he does a great job with that. This time appearing on the written side. Love the headline. The RNC disarray is a microcosm of everything Trump did wrong with the coronavirus. Subheader further explains he had no plan. The result is chaos. And I think everybody pretty much agrees with that assessment. I guess Donald Trump would disagree. But it is. It's chaotic and stupid. And looks terrible, and his son is on drugs. So we have that to discuss. I would say, maybe you want to check that article out. I like the sentiment expressed in the headline, and I'll look no further than that because there's so many other interesting stories to get to. On the coronavirus front, I'll throw you this curveball. I thought we had heard of such a case earlier. But this one is being expressed in terms of the first confirmed case of this happening. This being the first confirmed case of a person contracting COVID-19 twice. I thought we had heard of such a thing earlier. Maybe they didn't confirm it. Maybe it was just anecdotal in some way. But we now have researchers say Hong Kong man is the first confirmed to have COVID-19 twice, but more research is needed. Probably not about it whether he's first or not, but about, I don't know, whether he really got it. But so the bad news is a 33-year-old man living in Hong Kong had COVID-19 twice this year, which is bad news for him as well as the rest of us. According to preliminary research out of China, the preprint study, and those are, you don't know what those mean, but that's the habit these days, to break the news as early as possible, but double check with the usual peer review process later. Anyway, the preprint study, which the University of Hong Kong said on Monday has been accepted to be published in the journal Clinical Infectious Diseases. That is a fun journal. You want to get that one? That's really good. Clinical Infectious Disease Fancy found that the man's second case of COVID-19 occurred 142 days after the first. The study also noted that in the first case, the man showed symptoms, but in the second case, he was asymptomatic in that he did not show any noticeable symptoms anyway. During the first episode of illness, the patient had a cough, sore throat, fever, and headache for 3 days. That's not even so bad. According to the study, he tested positive for COVID-19, the disease caused by the novel coronavirus. You know the one, SARS-CoV-2. That was back on March 26th. Then, in his second episode, the patient was returning to Hong Kong from traveling in Spain via the UK. Wow, this is a bad itinerary. And he tested positive during his entry screening at the Hong Kong airport on August 15th, according to the study. The man was then thrown into an incinerator. Now, he could do that in China. He was hospitalized again, but remained asymptomatic. I don't know what he was doing. I hope it was important, or if it was a pleasure trip, I hope he had a great time. But man, I mean, I guess he thought it was probably relatively harmless. I've had COVID-19. I think I might be immune at this point. Most other people will be avoiding Spain and the UK for tourist travel, so maybe it'll be empty and it'll be great. I don't know how it was, but he came back with COVID-19 again. Is there other, I don't know if there's any other real interesting detail. It says down here in some context, just before it mentions, in summary, reinfection, at least for this guy, is possible 4.5 months after a first episode of symptomatic infection. Vaccination should also be considered, of course, for persons with a known history of COVID-19 once they actually develop it. But I guess that means a number of things. One, it might not last very long, even if you do get a vaccination. And two, you're going to have to make a lot more than you think, because you might have to vaccinate people who have already had it. So that's going to put some pressure on the manufacturers. Down here, more context. The researchers called this the first case of reinfection of COVID-19 in their paper, but other experts are calling for more research before naming this case truly the world's first. I guess they must have debunked the other ones we heard about. What I think is really important is that we put this into context, said Maria van Kerkhove, the World Health Organization's technical lead for coronavirus response and the head of the Emerging Diseases and what is that? Zoonosis unit? I mean, it's spelled zoonoses, but I can't believe that would be the proper pronunciation. I don't think I've ever run into that one before. Anyway, so there, I think we'll stick with that one. Look, I guess this would also, I must be looking at the CNN coronavirus roundup, and I've scrolled too far and gotten to this news. The Miami Dolphins will allow up to 13,000 fans at their home opener. So if they can find 13,000 fans for the Dolphins, you're in luck. We'll see how that goes. Oh boy, I just scrolled down a little bit further. This is the Zoom outage map, not the coronavirus is killing everybody map, because the United States was basically aflame with this, as were parts of Northern Europe. But apparently that's the Zoom outage from yesterday, not coronavirus problems. Okay. That's good news. I was wondering what other problems do we now have? Okay, I think that was top of mind anyway for the coronavirus problems. Let's see. A little more detail emerging yesterday, but I guess we'll leave it on the Falwells and just whatever. I don't think we learned anything super insightful since we left the air yesterday, but a couple more stories sort of rounding those items up. By the way, I guess I'll plead guilty to actually judging the Falwells after all. Bad news, everybody. Much of yesterday was spent with folks on our side of the spectrum reminding us all that we ought not to be necessarily shaming the Falwells for their sexual practices, but perhaps it was fair game to be shaming them on the hypocrisy. And I'm here for the hypocrisy accusations, absolutely. I'm stuck on, I am shaming them for everything, I think. So unfortunately I have to work through those problems. And not only that, but perhaps I might want to take on some of the hypocrisy as well, just to balance things out a little bit, because there are probably people I know who have, I don't know if exactly the same practices in mind, but that I would be hesitant to shame them for it, and I think that that may rest largely on the hypocrisy side of things. But, okay, on this I'm Gimmitarian. To hell with those guys, and up with our people. I don't know. Just I'm having difficulty getting past all of this to the point where I'm like, we won't really discuss the particular kink that seems to excite the Falwells. I'm not going to discuss it any, but I think less of them now. And I didn't think very much of them then. I think I'm willing to admit that. Okay, with that off my show, that's my birthday confession. We'll take a quick 2-minute break in just a second and regroup and try and plot a way forward here through the clutter of many, many stories that require attention. And, perhaps it's starting to look like a Thursday off-the-air pre-taped show might be taking shape from all of the stories that as I scan, I see, we'll never have time to get to the good stuff if I hit all of these equally good items that are a little more evergreen. We'll see whether I can put that together. But we'll return in 2 minutes with another raft of stories that I'm sure you'll enjoy just as much as I enjoy reading them out to you. And we'll be back in a minute. 2, in fact. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, and I've learned that I either need to update these announcements more often or stop saying that the announcements are brand new. What's not new is that this message, too, is a call for your support in keeping the Kagro in the Morning show on the air. My thanks go out to all of you who do support the show through your donations. The stats say that Kagro in the Morning fans download our program about 2,000 times each weekday, but our donors make up only about 8% of our daily listeners. Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple to make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. If we're helping keep you sane during the Trump era, consider what that's worth. $1 a day? 50 cents? One thin dime? We do about 20 shows a month, so pick a number, do the math, and head to Patreon.com/KagroX to let us know. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. Welcome back down to the Kagro in the Morning show here on Netroots Radio. Making my quick survey of other things, the mix of things. I don't know by what criterion, and sometimes I include things in Pocket versus retweeting them on Twitter, but very often I go scanning for them in Pocket and say, I must just have sent that on Twitter, but obviously it's intriguing to me. Let's see. In the trending topics, though, as I'm looking through this, I just will note for the record, since we were just doing the coronavirus roundup, University of Alabama reports over 560 COVID-19 cases since classes resumed. This particular report comes via the New York Post, or at least the photo does, but the first tweet in this was from the Daily Beast, so we'll give them the credit on that one when it comes to roundup time. But we're getting ready to bring our own oldest back on Thursday for classes that resume on campus next week. A smaller place than the University of Alabama, so I'm hopeful that they're able to keep things under control to some extent, although, who knows how this is going to go. I don't think anybody's going to be able to avoid it entirely, but we'll cross our fingers and do the best we can. I think the rumor everywhere, in addition to where our son goes, is essentially that the colleges are hoping to hang on to live classes for long enough to get them past the deadline after which they won't feel obligated to refund anybody their tuition or any part of their tuition. We'll see whether that holds together. And hopefully no one is endangering the health and safety of students, faculty, and staff in order to get there. But I'm sure somebody is. We just hope it isn't any place that we're near or anyone we know goes to. But I guess eventually it's going to catch up with all of us. Let's see. Other items that I saw either late at night or during the early morning hours that I thought you might want to be aware of. Did happen to catch this tweet of a story in the Western Slope Now. I don't know where, Grand Junction, Colorado. I guess that's, I don't know which paper it is that covers it, whether that's the name of the paper, Western Slope Now. That's the name of the website anyway. New mail sorting machine at Grand Junction Post Office Annex thrown out. I think we had heard of some action at the Grand Junction Postal Service Distribution Center last week, and maybe this is the one they're talking about. But a Fox 4 viewer there, although look at this, it's a hybrid, KREX5/Fox 4. I don't know how that works. Viewer, although lots of people view very many channels over their lifetime. Noticed something interesting being thrown out at a local United States Postal Service distribution center on Friday. The viewer says she went to the USPS sorting annex on Patterson Road and Berkey Street Monday morning when she noticed a red dumpster by the loading docks. So was it Friday or Monday? I don't know. Anyway, it says both. When that person asked the clerk what was being thrown out, the clerk said it is a brand new mail sorting machine. The clerk added, it took 2 months to set up, and they were just about to do a test run when the Postmaster General ordered us to take it out. Now we're sorting by hand. No wonder they say we're losing money when they throw out expensive machines like that. We spoke with a postal manager at the downtown Grand Junction office who said he couldn't comment on the matter, and they also reached out to the agency's Denver branch but haven't heard back. So awesome news there. Anyway, I just thought you might be interested in that one. We're throwing out the brand new machines. I mean, I guess they don't care once they're throwing out their machines, period. But we did hear over the weekend, and I don't think we mentioned it yesterday. I'll see if I can't come up with the tweet on it, but it'll take some scrolling to find it. But as I understand it, in, I think, Washington State, where the workers had been ordered likewise to dismantle and remove their sorting machines, they just simply said no. I don't know whether I'm imagining that they added FU to that, but I don't know. I don't want to put words in their mouth. But if we're going to try to put words in people's mouth, I think FU would be the ones I would put in there. And they just said, we're not doing it, which I think, without knowing anything about what it's like to defy orders as a postal worker, I would like to think we would see more of. I think that's a terrific thing, and why not exercise or play the same game that the Trump administration plays? If you want the damn things dismantled, you're going to have to find somebody who's willing to do it, because there aren't any here. And they may have plenty of people, and they may dispatch people who postal workers feel unjustified in defying or blocking their progress toward the machines. But hey, maybe not. Maybe just nobody's afraid of those guys. And if you want the machines disassembled from now on, you're going to have to come and do it yourself. Sounds like a great approach from the outside. I hope it's just that easy and that more postal workers will do it. It was nice to hear about. Let's see, another random news. I didn't know about this particular account, but I've seen similar things like it. A account on Twitter called Suspend the Prez. It's P-R-E-S. Suspend the Prez, with the identifier on the account. Will they suspend me? The idea is they run experiments. Every time the president tweets something questionable under Twitter rules, and especially when the Twitter rules take note of it, as was the case the other day, the tweet that, did we take note of it too? That he was tweeting that not only was mail-in balloting rife with fraud, but that you would also get coronavirus from doing it because you'd have to touch the mailbox. You remember this whole thing? Well, lots of people rightly said, yeah, that would be a violation of Twitter's rules against both coronavirus misinformation, possibly, and disseminating information, misleading or otherwise, that was designed to suppress the vote. So on 2 counts, that should have landed the president in trouble and had his account suspended. But he's allegedly the president, and Twitter is afraid to do that to him, and he'll spark a war over something like that. So they instead, and I think they've resorted to this with him before, instead put up a public notice that denotes that his tweet is incorrect and in violation of Twitter's rules, and blocking it initially from view, but you can click on something to see what it was that the president said that was against the rules, which I guess is a informative feature, but then of course it ends up disseminating the message anyway. But at any rate, this suspend the Prez account makes a habit of then grabbing that text and retweeting it verbatim and seeing what happens. And as you might guess, they suspend normal people for saying literally exactly the same things as the president, but they merely attach notes to what he says, and they suspend everyone else. You get your account locked, and you're told that you need to delete the tweet, and that if you don't, you'll be locked out of your account for, 48 hours or whatever their punishment range is. So apparently they've done this a couple of times, and somebody else runs the same experiment, and this was the 3rd time that they've done it, and the 3rd time that they've been caught up by either the enforcement algorithm or I don't know whether they have live watchers over there at Twitter or what, but interesting experiment, and still no explanation for the double standard other than we're just afraid of the president, which, it's not the worst excuse in the world, but they ought to get their act together. All right. Yes. Well, we can skip that. That's more coronavirus news that I'm scrolling through the Twitter feed here. I guess last night after tweeting, well, maybe we won't skip it. While I was tweeting out the daily COVID-19 stats from around the world and around the country, just noticed Florida. I guess for defenders of Ron DeSantis and other lunatics in Florida, they keep coming back still to the line of, well, yeah, there's lots of cases in Florida, but where are the deaths? They're coming. I guess I found them. One of the things I stumbled across in tweeting out the various rankings and charts I'm doing, and by the way, thanks to Asparagus Zucchini, who says he's working on a way of simplifying things so that the calculations can be done automatically, and that'll take some of the work out of figuring out some of the normalized statistics that aren't offered to me by worldometers, but that I find important. But I happen to notice Florida is 3rd among the states by a small margin in total cases so far of COVID-19. It is 2nd in total cases per 1 million in population. So normalized, it comes in 2nd, but in total score, it is nominally in 3rd. Texas remains 2nd, and I think they're due to pass Texas, especially if Texas is distracted by the hurricane later on. And I understand Marco has weakened to a small tropical depression, but Laura, is that right? Yeah, Laura is the name of the other hurricane that's looming out there, and it looks to be strengthening, and will make landfall in the U.S. as as they say, a major hurricane, or as Donald Trump would say, major hurricane, strongly. Anyway, Florida, 3rd in total cases, 2nd in total cases per 1 million in population. They are, though, 1st among the states in active cases, a category I haven't been paying enough attention to. And they are, I did the math on this one, 1st also in the number of active cases per 1 million in population. So even normalized, they occupy the top spot. Now in deaths, which the defenders always point to, they are 5th among the states in total number of deaths from COVID-19. and 17th in total deaths per 1 million population. So they lag far behind, luckily for them, in normalized numbers of deaths. However, if you want to know where the deaths are, that begins to offer you the hint. You see, there are 528,613 as of last night active cases in Florida. Active cases. And there are only 74,000 or so, 74,216 resolved cases. 10,399 as of last night had resolved in death. It was 63,817 cases that had resolved in a recovery for the patient. So what I'm saying is there are 500,000 plus active cases still looming out there looking for a resolution. And I will point out that the 10,000 plus who have died out of the 63 or 74,000 who know what the outcome of their case is, that is a death rate of 14%. Among cases that we know how it ends, 14% of them are deaths. That is, it appears to be the highest in the nation. So if you're wondering where are the deaths, the answer is somewhere among the 500,000, some number are going to die that are going to hopefully bring the numbers down. More will survive, and more in line with the rest of the country, which is under 5% of deaths from resolved cases. And it's going to take a long time to get back down to that number, and that number is going to boost them up the rankings in terms of total numbers of deaths and normalized numbers of deaths as well. So in the pipeline is the answer when you're asking where are the deaths. Don't ask it tongue-in-cheek as so many Republicans are, because the answer is pretty grim, and you're going to look stupid in a couple of weeks. But we keep saying that to them, and they, keep waiting and gloating over the fact that the deaths haven't arrived, which is terrific. I mean, I guess if you're going to gloat over something, gloat over the fact that people aren't dying. But some of them are gonna. I don't think they're going to get to 0% death anytime soon in Florida. Okay. Just wanted to alert you to that one. It's coming. Let's see. More substantive stories now. We'll switch over to what's parked in Pocket and dedicate a little bit more time to it. Here is a rather alarming story. I have two. Which one do you want to do first? Let's do this alarming story first. Actually, I happened to notice this one in my own wandering through Twitter, but Patrick Snyder also picked up on it and pointed it out, and so we'll mention that and say, all right, let's take a look at this thing. This was a tweet from someone I don't know, forwarded into my Twitter stream by others, but working as a public defender, purportedly. I mean, I guess we don't really know for sure, but this was a very scary sounding scenario, and we'll see whether it gets fleshed out in verifiable news sources somewhere along the line, but very worrying. So this person working as a public defender, noting that they were working under threat of arrest at this point, and it was, let's say, at very least, very unusual. This is a person who tweets under the handle of Foddery Fodder, Foddrey, Fodder, who identifies as a public defender, a criminal defense and public defense person, but basically has picked up a client. Well, we'll let this person explain it through their own writing. This thread, he or she says, is about his or her retaliatory arrest. 6 police units arrived at my mom's house at 5:30 a.m. 3 different police agencies showed up. All exits from my mom's house were barricaded, and they had officers surrounding the house. My mom, she doesn't live with her mom, you see, saw through her Ring speaker that 2 officers were sniffing through their license plates under the carport, meaning, I guess, they were snooping at the cars that were visible because they don't have a closed garage in the carport, and I guess running their plates. to see if there was anything outstanding that they could use against them. And her mom used the Ring speaker to then say, may I help you? And they said, the cops there said, that they had a warrant for this person's arrest. But they refused to say what the warrant was for. And Mom told them, he or she is a public defender and is at court. Now, I assume that they weren't really at court at 5:30 a.m., but they certainly weren't there in the house because they don't live there. This person, though, says, I guess we now know where she or he was. She was in her own house, I guess. Although, I don't know. Again, first I thought, old-fashioned me said that this person says, I immediately leave my house so as not to put my husband or my dog at risk. And I said, there's the answer. And then I immediately said, duh, that's not the answer. Get with the times. Yeah, forget these things from time to time. Yeah, as you know, it's my birthday and I'm 150 years old. I immediately leave my house so as not to put my husband or my dog at risk should they get the right address. And somehow got the mom's address here. Driving on the road, I am anxious that I'll be targeted and stopped to execute the warrant. They say next time, make it to my office, immediately start hiding out in my colleague's office who has no F's to give should, lots of fun profanity, should things go sideways. There, we plan to stay in the office to avoid arrest while figuring out exactly what's going on. My colleague begins calling the police department with the warrant, and the officer who answered the phone knew me and said that they were out trying to execute a warrant for me. Now, when asked what the warrant was for, they said they didn't have to say, which I'm not sure is really the law. And when asked for a copy of the warrant, which I think we all know at least from television police dramas, show me the warrant. Well, when asked for a copy, they said they didn't have authorization to provide us with one. This is a public defender's office. I think they would have authorization. The conversation switched drastically after those two questions to, where is she? Now we have an answer. Where is she? At her office. Bring her to us so we can execute the warrant and arrest her, they said. My colleague told the police that would not happen without more information on the warrant. Now, about 5 minutes later, the phone rings. My colleague answers and hands the phone to me. The guy who was trying to execute the warrant was on the phone, telling me that this will get ugly if I continue to avoid arrest. Now, again, I am at my office and I'm due to be at court at 2 p.m. So basically, she's saying to them now, if you want to execute the warrant, I'm not coming to you, but I'm at my office. You can come and get me. It's just that my office is the public defender's office. Or you can get me when I report to the courthouse at 2. Except, of course, they don't seem to be interested in coming and executing the warrant in the courthouse or at the public defender's office. What's going on here? And at this point, she says, their refusal to come to the courthouse to arrest me or to arrest me at my office was making me think something really sketchy was going on. I was working on an attempted murder case, attempted murder of a police officer and representing the defendant. It seemed far-fetched, but I was starting to think it was retaliation for that. So I called a few assistant district attorneys I know, the ADAs, who would do me favors, and asked them to look into it. They later reported that the police wouldn't give them any information about what the warrant was for either. Nothing. So the cops now refusing to tell the person who's allegedly the warrant is out against what are the charges, refusing to tell people at the houses where they're looking to serve the warrant what the charges are, refusing to tell the public defenders what the charges are, refusing to tell even the district attorney's office what the charges are. Something weird is going on here, right? But so further, they reported, not only that the police wouldn't give them any information, but that the ADAs checked the warrant system. And guess what? There's no warrant for this person's arrest. The warrant for me didn't exist, she says. When the ADAs called me back, they said the same thing. I don't know what's going on, but this looks like retaliation about that case. They won't tell us anything about the warrant, but we checked, and it doesn't exist. You need to stay somewhere other than your own home tonight. Don't let them arrest you. I don't know exactly what's going on, but I do know they intended to not release you, this person says, and to F with you. The cop mentioned holding you for 30 days, but they're going to try and hold you for as long as they can. And I don't know what comes out of this, and maybe I should check on this person's Twitter feed to see if there's any update to this, but I didn't see, nothing that was connected to the thread. But I guess they still, as of 10 hours ago anyway, they were still tweeting and retweeting things. But what a scary situation to have to deal with that. The cops now are, among the many things that they're doing to perpetuate their strange niche that they occupy in society, they are now, I guess, bored with planting evidence and making up their own warrants. And I guess if the cops, it probably works in many cases. If they show up at somebody's house like they're going to serve a warrant and say they have a warrant and maybe even wave a piece of paper at you. I know a lot of people know enough to ask to see the warrant. But if they then just snatch you up and you say, this is a fake warrant you got out of a Cracker Jack box, but you're already in the car, I don't know what happens to you. I guess they get to drive around until somebody finds you and files a habeas corpus motion to try and figure out where you are and get you released. It's pretty crazy and worrisome. And I don't see any updates so far from this person on the story. I'm sure if I scroll far enough back, we can find out. But I guess they're still out and at large. And I guess we'll count that as a good thing. A very interesting story. Thanks, Patrick, for pointing that one out. I don't know where that leads to, but just keeping an eye on the bleeding edge of the news here. We'll see whether anything comes of that. Here's another kind of weird one. I happened to notice Dan Friedman tweeting about yesterday. Why don't we throw this one in? This is a kind of a curveball news-wise. Rinat Akhmetov. I think we've actually tried to pronounce his name before on the show. An oligarch who facilitated Kremlin influence in Ukraine and who bankrolled Paul Manafort's secret lobbying and reportedly maintains organized crime ties, got $21 million in payroll protection program loans. How do you like that? There's some real interesting accounting that needs to be done in an audit of the PPP program one of these days. But of course, the original design of the thing, I guess if they had really executed it well, I'm sure we would have made a lot of mistakes and passed out a lot of money, but the idea was to get dollars flowing. But probably not to Ukrainian oligarchs. So let's check into that full story and see what the details are. I saw somebody retweeting this thing and saying, what? How? Well, we'll find out, I think, because the title of the piece is How a Ukrainian Oligarch's Companies Got Paycheck Protection Program Loans. Although we very frequently read those headlines and find out that the story is really about the fact that they got the loans and not anything about how it happened. We'll see whether Nick Schwellenbach and David Sakonyi, I'm guessing at that pronunciation, have gotten any closer to this. It is in pogo.org, although what is Pogo? It's not coming to mind immediately exactly who they are. Let me see if we can't find out a little. It's the Project on Government Oversight. There we go. I knew I've seen that abbreviation for it somewhere before. Let's go back to the actual story, though. Ukrainian billionaire Rinat Akhmetov owns 4 coal mining operations. Yay, coal. It's what the coal miners wanted, to be owned by Ukrainian billionaires. Sprinkled across Appalachia, or Appalachia, as some others say, they're probably correct, that received loans intended to help small businesses keep workers on payroll during the pandemic. They received a total of $21 million in PPP loans, according to a statement Akhmetov's company provided to the Project on Government Oversight. I guess that's understandable. I suppose if he's operating coal mines here in the U.S., we'd want to keep those people employed too, not just if you are employed by an American-owned company, I guess. And so it's likely to happen everywhere. But it is interesting and an interesting unintended consequence of casting the net widely. Far from mom and pop shops, now some people said that we ought to be concentrating more on those than billionaire oligarchs who could probably cover payroll for several months for their companies out of pocket and not even miss it, right? Far from mom and pop shops, many of which have reported difficulty obtaining those loans, the oligarch's United Coal Company and its subsidiaries had estimated sales of $1.5 billion last year. They export high-grade coal to Akhmetov's overseas steelmaking empire and occupy a segment of the coal industry that is reportedly still strong during the pandemic. So that's troublesome too. As a growing body of evidence shows that numerous loans went to companies that don't seem to truly need them, the firms controlled by Akhmetov, who reportedly owns two of the planet's most expensive homes and who had a cameo in Special Counsel Robert Mueller's report last year, appear to fit the mold of the less deserving. The total value of the loans also exceeds the amount of civil penalties United Coal has racked up for federal worker health and safety violations, POGO and the Anti-Corruption Data Collective found. So you would think if they were enemies of Trump's, Trump would, of course, try and offset those things. And why don't you just grab the money back? And I guess we could kind of agree with the sentiment on this one. Since Akhmetov bought United Coal in 2009, inspectors have uncovered 14,030 violations of federal health and safety standards worth $13.4 million in civil penalties across its mines, including some found after 5 miners died in accidents. One of the oligarch's largest U.S. mines, accused of chronic safety problems, also benefited from a controversial act of alleged leniency by the Trump administration. A string of lawsuits over several years by former employees have also accused United Coal of failing to pay them as entitled, underscoring the importance of ensuring Paycheck Protection Program loan recipients use the funds as intended. The federal government may completely forgive the loans if recipients meet certain conditions, such as using most of the loan funds to pay workers during these tough economic times. Whether they actually did that, open question. Okay, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Having a little trouble with the mute button there, but let's summarize the rest of the story, I think. At this point, jump around to some of the pull quotes from it, hitting the highlights, as the pull quotes often do. United Coal is among at least 27 companies with estimated revenues exceeding $1 billion last year that also received PPP loans. So, not really much of a small business focus on that. But I guess he could tend to get away with it. In fact, I don't think this is alleged anywhere that any laws or regulations were actually broken in this. It was just a little too loosely administered, and maybe by design at that. Let's see, though. Interesting point being made here, of course, seems true. This sends the dangerous message that an operator who has chronically disregarded safety may nevertheless obtain reprieve from the Mine Act's heaviest sanctions by the grace of a friendly administration. That would be the forbearance of the Trump administration in holding them accountable for their accidents. Also mentioned here, of course, Akhmetov and United Coal featured briefly in the investigation of Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election. Notes here that Mueller's report recounts that a decade and a half ago, Akhmetov hired Paul Manafort to support Ukraine's now defunct Party of Regions and its leader, Viktor Yanukovych, who would eventually become Ukraine's president. A leaked 2006 U.S. State Department cable referenced Manafort tapping into Akhmetov's wealth to successfully transform the party's image from that of a haven for mobsters into that of a legitimate political party. Totally legitimate businessman. Mueller's probe scrutinized Manafort due to his role as Donald Trump's presidential campaign chairman and chief strategist for several months. The prosecutors unearthed evidence leading to criminal charges against Manafort for secretly receiving more than $75 million from Yanukovych's Party of Regions in offshore bank accounts. According to a Senate Intelligence Committee report published last week, Akhmetov was one of 2 oligarchs who provided much of that funding. Previously unreported records in the case against Manafort show that his close associate Rick Gates proposed leveraging Akhmetov's ownership of United Coal to protect Akhmetov's political allies from U.S. congressional pressure in 2012. A pending Senate resolution aimed to denounce the Yanukovych government for what was widely seen as politically motivated retribution, the imprisonment of former Prime Minister Yulia Tymoshenko. We've discussed her case for sure on the show. She had opposed Akhmetov's privatization of a larger Ukrainian power company. Manafort and Gates sought to persuade senators to put a secret hold on that resolution. West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin appears to have been among the targets. On September 20th, 2012, amid a number of emails about Manchin, Gates wrote one with the subject line, United Coal. Seeking to counter the influence of Ukrainian Americans who supported the resolution, Gates wrote to an unknown person that the United operations are very big in something, redacted, I guess maybe West Virginia, and represent many jobs. I know, not Ukrainian, but the investor is, and he's making a significant investment in the operations. Prosecutors denoted the United Coal email as part of the completed lobbying effort, but whatever role United Coal ultimately played, the effort was unsuccessful. In the end, Gates pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI and conspiracy to commit financial fraud, testified as a witness against Manafort, who was, of course, convicted on 8 counts of tax and bank fraud in 2018 and is now resting comfortably at home because COVID-19 is too dangerous for him, but safe for your kids. So we'll just throw that one in there. But little mention here in another pull quote down at the bottom. It appears to have been within the bounds of the Paycheck Protection Program for these companies, which are the subject of federal money laundering lawsuits, to nonetheless receive loans under the PPP program. No barrier to that presented by being under investigation for money laundering, which is great news for oligarchs because it's one of their favorite activities. Okay, let's see. We can move on to a couple of the other stories that I have put aside. Let's see. We never did get to read all of this from the Daily Beast the other day about Jared Kushner, the latest revelations, and that there were more about his ties to the various oligarchs and those dispatched on Putin's orders to make inroads with the new administration, etc. But I think we kind of decided that the supposed bombshell from that one about the ventilators was something that we had already seen reported earlier. Of course, also over the weekend, which we didn't get any further into, the revelation that Mary Trump, who has the sort of tell-all book about Donald Trump out right now, I guess one of the details in, I don't know whether it's discussed in the book that she did this, but I guess her source in justifying the story she was telling to her publisher, it's revealed that she taped conversations with her aunt, we're using that pronunciation, Marianne Trump Barry, the one who was serving only up until recently as a senior federal judge and who had to, in the end, resign her judgeship and retire when the New York Times broke the story that pretty much all of the children of Fred Trump Sr. were participants in, and the whole family and all of their kids as well, participants in a scheme to evade taxes, probably illegally, in the structure of the Trump Organization. And that the ethics investigation that was almost assuredly likely to follow, plus the criminal investigation of tax evasion charges, would cause an awful lot of trouble for Marianne Trump Barry, so she decided to retire, and that mooted and closed the ethics investigation. And now all that remains is whether or not some future federal government will take up the investigation after Trump is out of office. But this particular story was about Mary Trump tape recording her discussions with Marianne Trump Barry, and some interesting revelations there. In a secretly recorded audio tape here, President Trump's sister says he has, quote, no principles, and, quote, you can't trust him. Now, this isn't really news for us. We don't trust him, and we know he has no principles. But it's of some interest, and we ought to enter some of this onto the record if you haven't read it before. Michael Kranish writing this for the Washington Post. And just want to get those quotes correct and on the record. Marianne Trump Barry was serving as a federal judge when she heard her brother, President Trump, suggest on Fox News, maybe I'll have to put her at the border amid a wave of refugees entering the United States. He was going to put, I guess some people were insisting that maybe they should put immigration judges down there to handle the cases because the indefinite detention of everybody coming across the border was resulting in a humanitarian crisis for which they were demanding action. And I guess he probably thought, well, she's a federal judge. I can put her there and I can lean on her and twist her arm and make her do things the way so we'll get an honest-to-God federal judge down there, but one who I'm sure in his mind is guaranteed to do everything that I want, even though I don't know that Marianne Trump Barry would have agreed to those terms, nor was she an immigration judge, in particular. But okay. So that comes up. Now, at the time that she heard this on TV, children were being separated from their parents, and they still are, and put in cramped quarters while court hearings dragged on. Now, part of the quotes on the tape here. All he wants to do is appeal to his base, Barry said in a conversation secretly recorded by her niece, Mary L. Trump. He has no principles, none. And his base, I mean, my God, if you were a religious person, you want to help people, not do this. Well, that's true. Good observation there. Barry, 83, was aghast at how her 74-year-old brother operated as president. His goddamn tweet and lying. Oh, my God. That's kind of funny. Just, an oldster trying to talk about his goddamn tweet and lying. Oh, my God, she said. I'm talking too freely, but the change of stories, the lack of preparation, the lying, holy other word for crap at this point is uttered. Lamenting what they're doing with kids at the border, she guessed her brother hasn't read my immigration opinions in court cases. I'm sure he hasn't read that. In one case, she berated a judge for failing to treat an asylum applicant respectfully. What has he read? Mary Trump asked her aunt. No, he doesn't read, Barry responded. In the weeks since Mary Trump's tell-all book about her uncle has been released, she's been questioned about the source of some of the information, such as her allegation that Trump paid a friend to take his SATs to enable him to transfer to the University of Pennsylvania. Nowhere in the book does she say that she recorded conversations with her aunt. In response to a question from the Washington Post about how she knew the president paid someone to take the SATs, Mary Trump revealed that she had surreptitiously taped 15 hours of face-to-face conversations with Barry in 2018 and 19. She provided the Post with previously unreleased transcripts and audio excerpts, which include exchanges that are not in her book. Barry has never spoken publicly about disagreements with the president, and her extraordinarily candid comments in the recordings mark the most critical comments known to have been made about him by one of his siblings. No one else in the family except Mary Trump has publicly rebuked the president. The transcripts reveal the depths of discord between the president and his sister, illuminating a rift that began when she asked her brother for a favor in the 1980s, which Trump has frequently used to try to take credit for her success. At one point, Barry said to her niece, "It's the phoniness of it all. It's the phoniness and this cruelty. Donald is cruel." Well, we all know that, but it's interesting to hear her say it. Mary Trump, 55, told the Post recently that her uncle is unfit to be president, and she plans to do everything in my power to elect Joe Biden. Her father, Fred Trump Jr., died of an alcohol-related illness when he was 16. She was 16. If he died when he was 16, that would have been real trouble. That was back in 1981. In her book, she says Donald Trump and his father mistreated her father. The Post sought comment about the tapes from Barry and White House officials on Friday and Saturday and didn't receive any response. After this story posted online Saturday night, the White House issued this statement from the president that said in full, "Every day it's something else. Who cares? I miss my brother and I'll continue to work hard for the American people. Not everyone agrees, but the results are obvious. Our country will soon be stronger than ever before." So that's a total non-answer, of course. Oh, that reminds me, by the way, somewhere I gotta find this tweet in my Twitter feed too about the Trump. Did I mention? I don't know. I might have found out after we finished on Friday that, well, of course, we had mentioned during the week that the president's brother Robert had died, and in a rather startling development, I guess, if you're startled by anything that the Trump administration does anymore, they decided to have the funeral for Robert in the White House, which I don't know whether it was like a memorial service for him in the White House or whether it was the actual funeral in the White House. But I mean, if it was the funeral, that's the way it was reported anyway. I mean, talk about your narcissism. There were complaints, I think, in this article and elsewhere that Donald Trump, speaking at his father's funeral, was typically self-centered and made his eulogy of his father about himself. I'm eulogizing my father. My father was a great man. He created me, and I'm awesome. And here are all of my successes. And so anybody that could be the father of such a person must also be worthy of, I don't know, some sort of mention, I guess, at this funeral. So I'll point that out. He's dead. Anyway, now they're having a funeral for his brother, and they're doing it at the White House. And I mean, I've never seen anything quite as egotistical as, he wants to have a funeral, huh? Well, pack him up in a box and ship him here. If you want to have me at the funeral, you're going to have to come to me. Bring the body to me if you want me to speak at this funeral. Well, we don't, but he's the president and he ordered it. Okay, I don't know whether they really did a memorial service of some kind, which wouldn't necessarily mean shipping the body to the White House, or whether they did a full-blown funeral there. But I also saw over the weekend that apparently at a local restaurant in D.C., a large group of people, some of whom apparently had, I guess, the programs or whatever you would call it, from the funeral that had just taken place in the White House, they had these things in hand, indicating that they were close enough family or friends to have attended the funeral at the White House, and they showed up at this local restaurant, and we're in the middle of a pandemic. Well, they demanded to be seated all together at a big party table, and that's not easy to do in the social distancing era. It might even have been impossible, and I guess they got frustrated at being told they might have to wait or might be unable to be seated all in one big group, and it escalated to the point where one member of the party apparently punches one of the workers at the restaurant square in the face and apparently breaks his nose. And, I mean, to me, it was obvious parallels. It was like, oh my God, the Trumps have gone full Palin here. Now they're brawling in local restaurants, just like the Palins used to end up doing. It wasn't in restaurants. It was the front yard or backyard of people's barbecues where they were having the cops called on them. But I didn't see much more reported about that one. And it was said in the article that I happened to see about the incident at the restaurant that no prominent members of the immediate Trump family appear to have been involved in any of this. I guess it would be extended family, but great impression on the locals, everybody. They came and they wrecked the place, and it's not even their place, David Broder might have said about them. Anyway, continuing with this story, Trump grouses about his sister being recorded saying these things. The allegation that the president paid someone to take his SATs, which is one of the most publicized allegations in Mary Trump's book, Too Much and Never Enough, right? How My Family Created the World's Most Dangerous Man, stems from a conversation that Barry had with her niece on November 1st, 2018. Barry told how she tried to help her brother get into college. He was a brat, Barry said, explaining that I did his homework for him. That explains a lot. And I drove him around New York City trying to get him into college. Then Barry dropped what Mary considered a bombshell. He went to Fordham for 1 year. It was actually 2 years, they note here. And then got into University of Pennsylvania because he had somebody take the exams. No way, Mary responded. He had somebody take his entrance exams? SATs or whatever. That's what I believe. Oh, that's all? That's what I believe, Barry said. I even remember the name. That person was Joe Shapiro, Barry said. Well, Donald Trump was friends with a person at Penn named Joe Shapiro, who is deceased. Shapiro's widow and sister told the Post last month that he never took a test for anybody, including Trump. Mary Trump has said it was a different Joe Shapiro, but that person has not surfaced. Who knows whether that turns out to be true. During a Post Live interview last month, Mary Trump was asked whether the source of her information was Barry. I prefer not to say who it is, she responded. It's somebody who would have absolutely no reason to make it up. Let's answer the phone now for Joan. Hey, good morning, Joan. How you doing?
Good morning. I'm fine. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm learning about, or I'm reading up on Mary Trump's taping of her aunt, Marianne Trump Barry, which we heard about over the weekend.
Please don't let me interrupt.
Okay. Well, I prefer that you do, but we'll end this, wrap this up. I think we're getting towards the end of at least the story of the SATs and whether or not Trump actually had somebody else take his SATs for him. That story is looking a little shaky, actually, in this reporting. But let's see. Chris Bastardi, a spokesman for Mary Trump, said that she began taping conversations in 2018 with Barry after concluding that her relatives had lied about the value of the family estate 2 decades earlier during a legal battle over her inheritance, in which she received far less than she expected. This is the sort of dirty dealings that you would expect from Donald Trump. Under New York law, it is that the taping was legal. Essentially, you only need consent of one party, so that matter is addressed. The inheritance dispute settled privately in 2001, but Mary Trump said she was duped into an agreement because the family said that the Fred Trump Sr. estate was worth $30 million. And she later believed that the value was closer to $1 billion. So this sort of tells you where they're coming from. And by the way, that would have, I think, required the cooperation of Marianne Trump Barry in all of this, too. Basically, all the other siblings conspired to to tell Fred Jr.'s kids, hey, all that's here is $30 million. And, pardon me, hiding, I guess, something in the neighborhood of $970 million from the actual value, and say, you get a split of $30 million, not $1 billion. And I don't know how she ever reconciles that or why she ever finds herself talking to her Aunt Marianne ever at all, except, I guess, to take shots at her Uncle Donald. And she provided them, and in spades, too. So, I don't know. I thought that was a pretty interesting story. A little bit of clarification on the SAT part. And, yeah, apparently they can't quite remember exactly who it was who took those tests, or at least the name that they came up with. The family denies it, as I guess any family probably would. But
yes,
I don't know that the Shapiro family has any reason necessarily to hide anything, except, I suppose, having their house burned down by federal troops or something like that, which I guess is entirely possible if you speak out against this president in that way.
It's entirely believable that somebody... Actually, what they should do is have him now take the SAT.
Yeah, right. Of course, if he believes that, if he knows how that test goes, he will avoid it. Although, I would say most adults, if you handed them the SATs, would probably bomb them pretty badly. Yes. The math section.
It does require sort of immediate having studied all of that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, but it might be, well, you know, he says he's a super genius, et cetera. It should be no problem for him.
Super genius. He can handle is this a rhino or an elephant?
Yeah, right. I could see him taking the test. When's the animals part?
Where's the clock?
I don't understand. What is this? There's this little symbol that they use. There's a circle and then this like little house they drew in here. I don't know what this thing is. That's pi, sir. You got to figure out the circumference of the circle using pi. Pi, right? So I don't know. We can guess what he might think.
2 scoops.
Right? Yeah. Give me. That's what. Yeah. Put ice cream on that. That's about it. All right. Well, anyway, the rest of the story is pretty much well known. I just there's a couple extra shots that Marianne Trump Barry takes at her brother, and essentially the grudge that she holds against him is. She, went on in her own right. She stayed out of the real estate business. A couple of the siblings steered clear of the real estate business and made their own way, insofar as somebody with, millions of dollars could make their own way. And she went to law school and got a job as an assistant U.S. attorney in New Jersey. After some years at home as a homemaker, by the way, which I thought was kind of interesting too. She graduated from college. I don't know whether she went to law school first, but then 13 years out of, without practicing law, and then said, I'm going to start working, and landed a job as a assistant U.S. attorney in New Jersey. And then the favor was, she said to her brother, Ronald Reagan, I'd like to see if I could get a federal judgeship in the works. And Reagan did appoint her to the federal bench in New Jersey. And then later, she was elevated to an appeals court seat, which I guess if she went to the same circuit, she'd be on the Third Circuit. Mm-hmm. And but by all accounts, conducted herself credibly and got that promotion to the appeals court on her own merits. And I guess I would say even getting appointed to the federal bench the first time. I mean, she worked 10 plus years as an assistant U.S. attorney, apparently one of 2 women in the entire office of 60 plus attorneys. And apparently Reagan was anxious to appoint a woman to the federal bench in that region. And so she really probably would have been one of the natural choices. I'm sure it was helped along by Donald Trump. But apparently he held it over her head her whole life. You're only a judge because of me. He thinks that about everything, I'm sure. And I guess it has embittered her a little bit, but not enough to not take millions of dollars. And by the way, own the house next door to Mar-a-Lago. That hasn't bothered her enough.
I'm sure it's just one of a million things that embitters her about her brother.
Yes.
But, yes.
Anyway, I just thought those were some interesting stories and wanted to summarize them for everybody. But, okay, there's other things going on in life. And perhaps you might have some ideas about what you wanted to discuss. Were you unfortunate enough to have to watch any of the convention last night?
We were having a minor pet emergency.
Oh, okay. Well,
so
that's better than a convention, actually. Lucky you, rather than watching the Republican convention. I hope everything's all right. And came out okay? But no, not quite. Okay.
No,
well, I'm sorry
I fear it's the beginning of the end for Mom's little dog.
Oh, well. Yeah, well, I'm sorry to hear that. That does happen. Circle of life and whatnot. It doesn't make it any easier, though.
Yes. No. Particularly during a pandemic.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah, well, you got to deal with that even in the veterinary field. There's people there at these veterinary offices. That's a problem.
Yeah.
Do the dogs ever complain about that? There's all these people with those disease.
Well, you don't actually go in.
Oh?
No, you go to the parking lot and then you call them and they come out and get your pet.
That's got to be stressful in addition. Healthy dogs aren't going to like that.
It's all very strange. Yeah. Everything is very weird in this thing, including Idaho. I don't know if you saw the news yesterday out of Idaho.
Uh-huh.
We are having a special session of the legislature figuring out various things related to coronavirus, including whether businesses and schools will have liability.
Oh, yeah.
Since the federal government doesn't seem to be moving fast enough on that, Idaho wants to create it for itself.
I see.
But Eamon Bundy, you remember Raymond Bundy,
Yeah.
led a whole mass of his anti-masker crazy people, liberty
Oh,
people,
boy. Okay.
to storm the special session.
Right. To make it really special.
Yeah, and we can pick that up on the other side.
Yeah, we'll have to do that. Of course, our ill-timed break, as always, interrupting things. But yeah, I'd like to hear a little bit about that. And I suppose, well, it's never a good time to storm your legislature, but during a pandemic, as you point out, especially bad. We'll pick this up again in 2 minutes. Be right back. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We are with Joan McCarter this morning, and when we left off just before the break, you were telling us that at least one Bundy is back. Is it just Eamon at this point, or does
as far as I know, it was just Eamon? Yeah.
All right. So they were storming the Idaho legislature because they wanted coronavirus or something, and somebody had it, and they wanted to give it to all the legislators.
I'm not sure what exactly their agenda was, other than freedom.
Well, isn't that good enough?
Freedom to
communist?
Get infected.
Yeah.
Because dozens and dozens of them, possibly hundreds, it's hard to tell, stormed into the State House, tried to get in a committee room where they were having one of their hearings on how to deal with this. Yeah. Broke a glass door, shattered a glass door, pounding on it, trying to get into the room.
Okay.
Meanwhile, state troopers are there. Nobody, of course, is in a mask.
Well, sure, of course not. Although,
including most of the Republican lawmakers who were there. So they decided, all right, in previous protests, for example, the ongoing protests we've had for add the words, for protections for LGBTQ people to be added into the state constitution. We've had these protests going now for a decade.
Okay.
Silent protesters standing by doors are arrested by state troopers
because
for whatever, impeding whatever.
Yeah.
But these people come in en masse, many wearing guns, breaking doors, raising hell, and what happens to them is they're allowed into a larger room. They move the hearing to a larger room to accommodate these people.
Oh, wonderful. Well, it's hard not to conclude that they're right about the importance of the guns, because you seem to get your way. But I think it's more about kinship with the police than anything else. Hey, I love guns too. I'm actually on your side, so that's why you're not getting arrested. It's not so much, oh, I'm afraid of your guns and you're going to overthrow the state government, as awesome, I love your guns, and also I hang out with you all the time. So,
well, that too.
You're allowed to go ahead and do that. And that explains the difference, of course, in the treatment of Black Lives Matter protesters and open carry protesters.
Right. Had our Black Lives Matter protesters been there, they'd be in jail.
Yeah.
It's incredibly frustrating. It's going to end up being a super spreader event, and it's taking place about a mile from my house. So, I'm never leaving the house.
Okay. Yeah, that's bad news, too. All right. Well, good luck. And I'm glad that they let them in, because if they threw them out, they'd, I guess, wander the neighborhood and they could walk past your house. That's bad news.
I suppose so. Yeah. We ended up with one Democratic lawmaker having to leave because she didn't feel personally safe.
Yes.
I think
On a
either
number of
from
levels.
violence or from COVID.
Right.
A couple of other Democratic lawmakers couldn't be there to debate because they knew going into it that the Republican legislators were not going to take this seriously. We're not going to be masked up and be
Yeah.
abiding by the rules, so they just didn't come in.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't an opportunity to do any of this remotely, so what you can do is pair votes in Idaho's
yes,
legislature.
okay.
So you can pair up with another legislator who's voting opposite of you, and they'll cast the two votes together, so negating each other's votes. That's one thing that's allowed, and a couple of them did that. But
Okay.
yeah, they did not feel safe, and here we go, Idaho.
Yeah.
All of it. The governor he started out really strong, Governor Brad Little, in imposing restrictions in the social distancing and closing restaurants, bars, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been, because we had a resurgence like all of the other red states had a resurgence a couple months ago.
Yes.
He's kept us at stage 4.
Okay.
And that apparently is enough to enrage these people. So.
Well, I hate the number 4. Probably. Well, or all Arabic numerals are anathema to them, and if it was stage IV, I think they'd be happy. But apparently, you were mentioning, we talked a little bit about it during the break. There's, I guess, chief among the irritants here is that there's a mask requirement, but you said it's only in one county in Idaho. Is that right?
As far as
something like
more
one?
than Ada County, the one I'm in.
Yeah.
I think maybe Blaine County, where it started,
Okay.
is not statewide.
Yeah, just to select locations, and that's not where Bundy lives. It just exists, and that irritates him.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know what he would be doing otherwise. I mean, so I believe he works. They have a ranch or something like that.
Really afraid he is positioning himself to do something like run for governor.
Yeah.
I'm really afraid that this state would elect him.
Huh. Well, I guess anything's possible in the Trump era, and I'm sure he feels the pull of his celebrity daily and wants to do something with it. Apparently bored with ranching. He should quit.
I don't think that they really ranch.
I guess not. I mean,
as near as I can tell,
we're the ones feeding the cows, so I guess they're not. I don't know what they're doing. They just walk around watching them eat.
So anyway, there's your Idaho update. We haven't done one of those in a while.
Yeah, thank you. We don't get that kind of news nationally all that often.
Oh, unfortunately, you do get Idaho news nationally, and it's all the bad stuff. This has made national news.
Okay. Well, I imagine this would, eventually. But we don't always get it from somebody who's a mile away. That's
true.
That's the real point. Okay. Well, we appreciate the hyper-local focus on that. It should be in the national news. I would think storming your state legislature would make a few waves. That's true. But whether or not they know the masking situation and the mandate situation in the counties, it's important to get that local color.
Well, the local color ends at my front door. I am not going to go out and find it.
All right. If it happens on the sidewalk, I'll let you know. Okay. That's fine. We don't need you to put yourself in danger to get the story. But you can monitor stories all across the country these days with the the marvel of modern electronics.
It's
Maine,
amazing stuff. It's amazing stuff. And we just have to talk a little bit about what happened at the far end of the country in Maine.
Yes.
Where Susan Collins attended an event at a headquarters for the Republicans that have this huge Trump-Pence banner at the top of the building. Mm-hmm. So, and it was basically a Trump event. Lots of Susan Collins signs there. But Collins actually, in a tweet where she talked about a meet and greet that she was having in this building, blurred out a tiny sliver of a Trump Pence sign that was in one of the pictures.
Okay.
She actually tried to erase Trump from the Trump event she was attending.
Wow. It's not easy to do, I wouldn't think, although I guess they found the one place to stand where they figured we can. I wonder if they planned that out.
I think they went through all of the pictures that they had and found the one that had the least Trump in it, and then blurred that little bit. It was very, very funny.
I'm going to take a look at that.
Susan Collins still hasn't said whether or not she voted for Trump in the primary.
Yeah.
He was the only Republican on the presidential ballot.
Okay.
Or whether she's going to vote for him in November. She just won't say.
Okay. I figure
She
that's
says she's focused
good
on her
public
race, and that's all she can do right now.
Is she going to vote for herself? Let's make her answer. All right, I see the
so
pictures
that's
now.
just a fun little insight to Susan Collins' campaign. I don't think it's going to work.
Okay, I think people know the whole thing about parties and kind of how they work, and his name will be up at the top of the ballot, and everyone will probably kind of guess. But I see the picture of the building anyway. Yeah, I guess. I guess if you frame it right, you'll be surrounded by your own campaign signs.
On the door into the building, there's a Trump Pence yard sign.
And I see the pictures you have in the article. I mean, she's posing not only in front of that door, but with somebody with a mask on that says Trump on it. I don't know how.
Yes.
I guess you could Photoshop that too, but I don't know. I guess she just decided not to use that photo. Period. But okay.
She did not share that photo. Communications director for Sarah Gideon shared that photo.
Well, that's the problem with photographing things. Yeah, all right. I see she's chosen. I mean, maybe this is her traditional election campaign signs, but she's plastered the place with her own signs, which are very different. Sometimes people will try to coordinate the color and themes of their signs with the top of the ticket, and I guess she's doing her best to go the opposite direction. But too bad. Everyone is aware of who the president of the United States is.
She's happy to be associated with the top of the ticket. And in her small little Republican circle, she's very happy to be associated with the top of the ticket.
It's just public, yeah. In
the larger public, no thanks.
Right.
And she's just...
Well, hopefully we're finished with her soon.
Ridiculous duplicity in this woman.
Yes. Well, thankfully, Mainers appear to be finally, at long last, kind of fed up with what she's doing and how she conducts herself. And, I mean, she's just a huge coward. And I think they're tired of that. But they have some election work to do first.
They do. So please, Maine, please.
And just as we'll all have a big party for you afterwards. Free, I don't know, what do they need?
Lobster.
Let us know. Right, yeah, right. There you go. Lobsters on us.
No, lobster bibs.
Oh, okay.
I don't think we're going to be able to afford the lobsters.
Well, I think they're just crawling out of the ocean up there. So, yeah, maybe. All right, we'll do the bibs. Sure. It's like PPE, but for eating lobster. Keeps your shirt clean.
There you go. Yeah.
Okay.
So that's the world of Susan Collins.
Yuck.
Segues into how important it is that we take the Senate.
All right, let's do that.
We really, really need to have Congress, just in case something happens and Trump makes it in again.
Mm-hmm. Yes, true. And I noticed in their usual delusion, but you never know with these weirdo cheaters, Trump announcing with great certainty that he's pretty sure that the Republicans are going to take back the House as well, which I don't think anybody really believes. But I mean, what if?
If he sabotages things enough, it's possible.
Anything can happen if you just cheat and determine, the outcome by fiat. But the Senate, certainly, that's in a normal election, if things go regularly as we're used to and everybody gets a fair shot at things, there's a serious chance of winning over the Senate, and the Republicans will do anything to keep that as a firewall against all hell breaking loose and us becoming a communist dictatorship, as they were telling us last night. So, yes, working on taking back the Senate.
We need to take back the Senate so we can save Social Security. I mean,
okay,
we have to defeat Trump to save Social Security, period.
Yeah, can't have both.
You remember among Trump's executive orders that weren't really executive orders, but were more like memorandum.
Right.
That he came out with to save the day when he had Mark Meadows destroy negotiations for coronavirus relief. You remember all that. It was just last month, right?
Yes, that I can
hold
on to that.
Yeah, it was July.
Okay.
One of his executive actions was to tell the IRS to defer taking payroll taxes paid in by employee contributions. Okay. So we already have a holiday on employer contributions to the payroll taxes, which I'm not sure all of them have taken. And now most of them probably are not going to go along with the employee payroll tax break. Mm-hmm. Because there hasn't been anything figured out on how that money's going to be recouped. It's just a tax holiday. It's deferring them. It's not eliminating them. Yeah. So, probably most employers are not going to do it because it's all too confusing. But along with that came Trump's promise that he would terminate the payroll tax. First thing he did after re-election, payroll tax gone.
Okay.
So, wondering what would actually happen if that were to take place. A bunch of Democratic senators, Schumer, Wyden, Van Hollen, and Sanders, wrote to the chief actuary of Social Security to say, so what does this mean? The chief actuary says that it means there's only a year left in the disability fund. If that, it ends in 2021, and Social Security is completely depleted by 2023.
Okay. So he could get it done inside of a second Trump administration if he really wanted to.
Yeah, if he really wanted to. Okay. And if he had a Congress that was willing to go along with him in doing so.
Or he could just pretend
now, those
to order
are big ifs. Yeah. Those are really big ifs. But one of the things that's important to realize is that when Trump claimed he had the authority to do this in his executive action, he claimed he had the authority just to unilaterally do away with the payroll tax entirely.
Yeah.
He's not looking at doing it legislatively. He's not looking at involving Congress in it. He just says he can do it. And if you have a Republican Senate, look what Mitch McConnell's been willing to let him get away with so far.
I guess he can order it, and there could be legal battles over it, certainly. And then at some point you'd say, well, you're way overstepping the bounds of executive power. We will impeach you. But, of course, if you retain a Republican Senate, you'll impeach him, but you won't be removing him. And what's the difference?
Who's going to stop him?
Yeah.
So far, nobody has stopped him on anything.
No.
He's ignoring the Supreme Court.
Yes.
On immigration.
So far. Yes, true. There was the DACA decision, and they had a deadline to comply with. Although the details now escape me, but not the part about his defiance of it. The deadlines have come and gone.
The details escape me too because I haven't been writing on that. I've been writing on Postal Service and Social Security. But he just says,
I
heard
you,
Supreme Court. Yeah. I don't like what you did on a couple of decisions this year, so I'm going to ignore you on this one.
Yeah. Although, isn't the DACA decision the same one that he now cites for giving him the unlimited power to do things like eliminate the payroll tax and of course, launch a fully formed healthcare plan in minus 2 weeks?
Indeed.
But so it's interesting that this ruling gives me the unlimited power I need to do and say these things, but I'm going to actually disobey the the opinion, the ruling in this case. Okay, that's some pretty selective logic there, I guess.
They will do anything.
I guess so. Yeah, I'll have to find that that information. But I did see it tweeted out the other day and retweeted it myself, and now I'll grab that for everybody. So in case you too have had the details escape you, we can try and track those things down.
It's important. It's,
yes.
You know, kind of
of course,
the whole shebang.
Yeah.
Constitution.
Yeah.
The Republic.
It's a little
three
bit,
branches of government. You know,
it's a little thing we like to call the whole system and the way it works.
and yeah, I think that when Trump says I'm going to terminate the payroll tax and there won't be a payroll tax anymore, you can see with everything else that he's done that he hasn't thought out, oh, I have to have some other way to fund Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Nope.
Like his health care plan that doesn't exist. It's just, we're doing this, it's gone. He means it.
Yeah.
And it very well could mean Social Security has no more money after 2023.
Yeah, well, it's one of those
things. I mean, you hate to
that,
be alarmist, but it's Trump.
Why wouldn't
you
you
know,
say
it's
so?
kind of justified to be alarmist.
Yeah. That's the kind of thing that would really excite him, that, you know, that presidents have been, you know, or he'll make up the story. Presidents have been trying to do this for years, like he says with Veterans Choice, but only I could do it. He didn't do it with Veterans Choice. Of course, that was Obama, but he continues to say this anyway. And here, I mean, nobody's trying to eliminate Social Security entirely. Or, I mean, I guess some people have maybe fantasized about it, but and certainly Republican presidents have thought about cutting it back and limiting it. Well, I'm sure
they want to take it out of public hands.
Yeah.
They want to take all of that money.
Privatize
It's
it.
not to save you money, which Trump purportedly is doing with the payroll taxes. It's to take your contributions via payroll taxes and give them to the private market.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's worse in retrospect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, at least, you know, if you could put it in a savings account under Trump's plan. You could take that same amount and put it in a CD or a savings account, or
I guess so.
or the stock
just have it stolen. Okay, well, I'm not sure which one's worse then, but well, they're equally bad, obviously, and you know, to the extent that his base in the 2016 election was largely comprised of Social Security beneficiaries. It's not the easiest thing in the world to explain to them. It's not that far removed. You should be able to grasp it, but a lot of people, if you don't want to hear it, you'll never grasp it. But you know, there's a step removed there. You know, sure, you're getting money, or you keep money that you might otherwise be paying in payroll taxes. Although if you're a Social Security beneficiary, you're retired and you're not being taxed on your payroll. So
right,
you're not saving anything.
You are, in fact, receiving Social Security out of the current generation's payroll taxes. That's what's paying you now.
So Trump is letting everybody who's paying you off the hook. No more money for you, old people, because the young people, and you know you hate young people, you old people, right? They're going to keep all the money that they earned. Oh, well, can't have that. I don't know. I guess it's appealing to young voters who don't feel any sense of obligation to others. But that's a rarer breed than ever these days.
Yes.
As it turns out. So, okay. Well, we're going to do that.
Yeah, it's worst case scenario, but it's also Trump.
Yeah.
And, you know, his advisors have been trying to say, well, no, he's not terminating the payroll taxes. No, we'll figure out something for Social Security. No, he doesn't really mean he wants to end all of this. But he does.
He'll probably blurt it out at some point, too.
He has blurted it out. He's going to terminate the payroll taxes.
Oh, I thought, yeah.
And he doesn't, and then he says, yeah, well, don't worry about Social Security, but he doesn't have a plan for Social Security.
Right. Well,
he won't have a plan for Social Security.
He could never. I mean, all you have to do is look at the healthcare situation. He promised he had a plan for that. 10 times. And the last time he said, I'm going to have it for you in 2 weeks. And in fact, I'm going to sign it. It's going to be legislated. I'm going to be all done with it. And it's like my mind goes back to the picture of him allegedly writing his State of the Union address at Mar-a-Lago with the blank pages in front of him. There's the plan. He's working on it right now. But yeah, that's been so ludicrous for so long. That was one of the first really just truly vapid things that we heard him say in his at the beginning of his presidential campaign. We're gonna, I don't know what we're gonna have, but I'm gonna have healthcare that's so beautiful and simple, everyone's gonna love it. We're gonna have something great. I couldn't believe he wasn't, bounced out of the race right there. What's your plan for healthcare? Well, we're gonna replace it with something great. Oh my God. What?
Yep.
Oh, I think maybe he'll go on to win not only the primaries, but the general election. How could that be?
Well, there are all those emails.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And Benghazi.
Yes, I can always lean on those. But Benghazi didn't work for Mitt Romney. He just didn't know how to exploit it, I guess.
Yes.
Even with his smirk, he still couldn't get it right.
I think the thing to keep in mind is that Trump is capable of doing anything.
Yeah.
He's got the power. He'll do it. And, if he'll destroy the 245-year-old as of tomorrow Postal Service.
Yeah. Oh, is it tomorrow?
I think tomorrow's its 245th birthday.
Oh, excellent. All the birthdays.
So it predates American independence.
Yeah. That is
1775, the Second Continental Congress gave us the Postal Service.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think I remember that vaguely from American history classes, but it's the sort of thing that can't be right.
I looked it up actually recently because I'm writing about the Postal Service.
All right, well, that's good research then. Yeah, I don't know if I certainly wouldn't have pegged the year for it, but now that you mentioned it predates independence. Yeah, I think they did say that back then in 8th grade or whatever.
Ben Franklin.
Yeah, he predates everything. Jeez.
Yes.
Pretty much.
So if Trump's willing to destroy that,
certainly,
probably it might be the most cherished of all American institutions because it is 245 years old, and because it is remarkable.
Yeah.
That you can put a stamp on a piece of paper, put it in the mail, and 2-3 days later, across the country, your friend has it.
Right.
That's an amazing thing.
Yes. For free to them, too, which is also a real anomaly. Definitely pre-corporate America, right? There's no delivery fee that the recipient
just shows
has to
up
pay.
in your box.
It's pretty amazing. And somebody brings it there and puts it there by hand. And just a reminder, the private delivery services, for the most part, don't do that. In most of America, they just don't make it to mailboxes. They just give it to the post office and say, you bring it there. There's no FedEx or Amazon truck showing up at every house in America.
They don't go to every house in America.
Right. They won't. It's not worth it to them, and you can't make it.
Nope.
But yeah, it makes good sense. Now all my American history is coming back to me. Of course, the Continental Congress would have cherished, the founders would have cherished the idea of well, they did, and they established it. But thinking back to...
And it's in the Constitution.
Yeah, and because of the early American, the style, the approach that they took to the independence movement, the committees of correspondence... Now that I'm remembering my 8th grade history, between the colonies, they plotted their strategy against the crown by mail. And the crown at that point could seize that mail and find out who was plotting things against the crown. And so they said, one of the things we're going to have is reliable and affordable and private, in terms of prying eyes of the government, ways of having people among the colonies be able to communicate reliably with one another. Otherwise, we'll never integrate this place into a country. 200 and something
years later.
And here we are,
245 years later, and he's pissing on it.
F the country. Raise the statues of the Confederate generals. There's no more he could do to undermine the integrity of the Union. So, Well,
once
that's a
again, we're
challenge to
ending
him.
on a cheerful note.
Yay! That's right. Just to recap for everybody, it started with Eamon Bundy storming the legislature and getting away with it, and Donald Trump destroying the American Union. See you again next Tuesday for another exciting episode of What the Hell's Going On in This Country. Thank you, Joan. I appreciate it. You know what? It's actually fun to go over these things regardless of how bad the news is. I appreciate your being here.
Well, I'm glad you think so. I like doing it every week. It helps. We're sharing the pain.
I guess that's it. All right. Well, we'll chalk it up to that and look forward to hearing from you next Tuesday. And all the time in between, too. Of course, we'll be watching what you're writing on the front page and chatting with you on Twitter. See you then.
Thanks, Kagro. Bye-bye.
Take care.
From Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Well, guess what? There's more happening, or more reporting coming up on what's going on at the Idaho State House with Justice Putnam on the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy coming up next. Plus, of course, information from around the country and around the world, including Angela Merkel stepping up finally and officially into that role of leader of the free world. He'll tell you how next.